A group of prisoners literally did the impossible to escape from prison in a genius way. They gained specific tools through which they were able to demolish the prison in every sense of the word, diving 500 meters continuously, followed by a genius prison escape planned by history, and wondrous and strange events that you will hear for the first time, because the topic is not just an escape from a prison, or just a genius plan to escape. So don't forget to like, friend, and let's start with today's episode. In the year 2001 in the United Kingdom, specifically the city of Wake, overlooking the North Sea, their young man, John Lacon, 30 years old, was working in the landline communications department of the city of Wake after 3 continuous years of service. In this place, he was suffering from poor financial condition and poor countryside, which was never necessary because this young man used to travel at the end of every month from the city of Wick to Manchester, one of the gambling stations, until he went to earn money and lose it and return home. He was addicted to gambling, and no matter how hard he tried to leave it, he could not do this thing. He thinks that perhaps this time, luck will smile on him and he will win. And this is the beginning of what will lead him to life after a period of time and various events that you will hear. The important thing is that one day he traveled to Manchester and made an amount of money that he was carrying, meaning an amount that he did not have in the first place, but he tried his luck, and if he lost, as usual, this time he became indebted to a large amount that was impossible for him to pay from his salary in this simple job. Therefore, he began to pay the debts, but in convenient installments. He withdraws his entire salary and pays the bills, and the rest of the money is paid with them in the monthly installment. As such, he is supposed to pay all his debts within certain years. The problem is that the comfortable installments had major drawbacks, the first of which is a percentage of the rest of the debt amount is added as anguish, and no matter how much it is paid, the amount continues to increase by a certain percentage over the days. The owner was literally drowning and literally diving into the debt, which was worth the equivalent of $200,000. Days passed and our friend thought of a way to get rid of this debt, and his job was to monitor the emergency lines. For example, a person, he has an emergency and calls the police by mistake. For example, he needs an ambulance. Music in the job. I will explain the idea to you. I will talk about its details directly, and you will understand it. A woman named Maroney called the city police, and she was in extreme fear and shock. She informed them that her husband had choked on food, and she did not know what to do. The police had reached John. He transferred the call to ambulance and health so that they would help her as quickly as possible. And this is what actually happened, but unfortunately, Maroney Euro's husband died before help arrived. After a few days had passed, John began implementing the plan through which he would take advantage of this old woman and defraud her. He called her on the landline and said to her, "Euro pay you Mrs. Maroney?" Euro, she said. Yes. He told her that he was an employee in the bank she was dealing with, and that she cashed a check in her husband Euro's name. She told him that it was correct, and John said that it was the bank that discovered that her husband was dead. In both cases, this would expose her to legal questions before the court, and until she understood what had become of John, he knew that Maroney had died. To those who referred to her call to the ambulance and guessed that she had withdrawn a check from one of the banks to cover the costs of the ambulance, and also the costs of the funeral ceremony, and since she's old in age, he guessed that her husband had money in the bank, and he was spending it on her. For those who died, it is possible to see that she withdrew a check in her husband's name to cover the costs of his death, and believe me, my friend, this was just a mistake. But by chance he guessed that the problem was that what Maroney had done was normal and permissible and had no legal problems. But Maroney did not know the law, but what she knew was that this was normal, and after what she and John said, there was a problem because of her husband's death, and that he who had done it was in violation and might expose her to accountability. He made her afraid and prepare for the fraud that she was about to hear. He told me, Euro Maroney, you are an old woman, and I will help you in bringing matters to court. Do you agree? She said to him, Euro, and thanked him. She asked him what exactly you were going to do to me. He told her. Euro git is simple. Euro the check you cashed is considered counterfeit, and you spent the money for that reason. You make a second check with the same financial value and exactly the same details, but the difference is that you leave the name of the recipient blank, meaning I write you a check, but I do not write your name. Also, the withdrawal date is open, meaning there is no time for me to receive it during this thing, and if I do not receive it, it may be dropped. And what will happen is that when I receive this check, I add it to the bank's checkbook. Write an old date on the check, and add the name of the deceased, who is your husband, on the basis that he is the one who cashed this check, and everything returns to its place. But what you have to settle is that you sign the deceased husband's signature and the seal, so that everything is official. Are my words clear? She said to him. Yes, I understand you, Moroni, because of her psychological state, due to Zoe losing his face, and also the pressure that John caused her. She did not understand what this was going to happen, but she was trying to avoid any problems that might come into her because of the check that she cashed, and all her suspicions and belief were that she was really in violation, so she agreed at length and wrote a check with a value equivalent to $25,000 without anything. She writes the name of the person and there is no specific date for receipt. John said to her, I will send an employee to receive the check from you without giving him the details. I am coming to help you without the knowledge of the bank management, whose only concern is that you pay a high fine in order for it to be deducted from your dead husband Euro's account, and you are more entitled to this money. Euro, do you agree? She said to him. Euro Suja. Euro, and she actually handed her the check. She was reassured that the problem was almost solved, but our friend, the fraudster, was thinking about the $200,000 he owed, and told the old man of Moroni that the check had arrived, but the husband Euro's signature was not identical. In this case, the check is considered forged, and it is necessary to draw up a second check with exactly the same form and details. And please, lady, sign correctly. And this is the last chance for me to help you. John was literally manipulating his nerves, and at the same time playing the role of a savior who helps without any compensation, and all his concern is to help people. This thing made the old woman, Moroni, trust him, and she actually signed a second check for him as well, for the value of $25,000. And this is the way our friend John, he earned the easiest $500,000 that he could earn throughout his life, and also the last $50,000. Because what happened next was, John, after he drew the checks, he did not call the old woman and did not tell her that it was all over. He just said goodbye to her and said to her, Euro's check has arrived and I verify